Okay, I'm impressed. Welcome everyone to another edition of Get Your Game On, the channel dedicated to immersive gaming experiences. So, this showed up just about 24 hours ago, and I wanted to get out my first impressions video so you guys could get an idea of what I think about the new Meta Quest 3. So it's been a lot of firsts for me. This is obviously the first time I've bought any product from Meta, and it's also the first time I've ever used Pancake lenses. So that's a first. And then also the first time I've ever done any kind of mixed reality or augmented reality. And finally, it's the first time I've ever used finger tracking. So this little headset in 24 hours has really given me a lot. And I can tell you this headset, I think one of my favorite things about this headset is it felt like a next generation. This thing, with all of those things combined with the finger tracking and all of that, it felt like this was a step up. This felt like we have taken the next leap in virtual reality from a generational standpoint. You know, we only had the kind of visual quality in the really high-end, high-tier Vario Aero and the Pimax Crystal. And this little headset right here, let me tell you, does a pretty dang good job for a quarter of the money or a third of the money that those really expensive headsets cost. Just to be clear, if this is your first time in VR, if you're new to VR, VR is very different and subjective for everyone out there. So the experiences that I'm sharing with you are the experiences that I've had. They may not reflect the experiences that other people have, but hopefully these experiences might give you an idea of this headset and what it can do. So I am so excited because I think we are finally at that point in virtual reality where we have a headset that basically speaks to the masses. The experience in this is finally to the level that I think people that have never tried virtual reality or tried it a long time ago can appreciate. So what this thing's going to do for the industry, I'm thrilled. I think we finally have a device that's somewhat affordable and gives an experience unlike anything that we've had before in this price range. I can't overemphasize the impact of these Pancake lenses. In fact, I'd be willing to say that this headset here is closer in the experience to the Aero or the Crystal than it is to the first generation of headsets like our old, original Vives and, even the Quest 2. This thing from a Quest 2, even though on paper the resolution, all that stuff might not look like that big of a leap, this thing is a generational leap for anybody that's had a Quest 2. So, let's talk a little bit about the overall design before we get into everything. So, the Pancake lenses, obviously, they give you the edge-to-edge clarity of what we're used to in the aspheric lenses that you get in the Pimax Crystal and the Vario Aero. They do it in a slimmer form factor, so you can see this thing is so tiny. And even though this thing weighs the same as a Quest 2, because it's closer to your face, it worked great. I really found this to be comfortable, and I can see why all those people are raving about the ergonomics of the Big Screen Beyond, because I think this is a step in that direction. Obviously, it's nowhere near the Big Screen Beyond, but if that's something you're leaning to comfort-wise, this thing kind of gets you there, more so than definitely the bulkiness and the monstrosity of the Pimax Crystal. It's even a little ergonomically better as far as the size and all that stuff than the Vario Aero. Now, obviously, the head strap, is a point of contention. There's not a lot of adjustment here. You have Velcro, and then you have these sliders that kind of allow you to tighten it up and everything. And I can tell you when I first wore this, I wore it for about an hour, and where these buckles are really started to dig into the back of my head, and it got uncomfortable. Since then, I actually kind of messed with the adjustments a little bit more, and I was able to play in it for several hours last night, and I didn't have that same pain. But it's not a real secure feeling compared to the kind that, you wrap down on the back of your head and you turn the knob. This one feels more like you're kind of wearing a baseball cap, and it feels like it could potentially slide off. So I think anybody that's going to be serious about using this headset, you're going to be looking at an aftermarket strap, I'm sure. The nice thing is what we have here, we have our IPD adjustment now. Instead of the Quest 2 where you had to select those 3 presets, this thing you can basically dial in your IPD, and it does have the IPD number while you're doing it. It pops on the screen what number it is, so you can actually dial it to your IPD. So that's really nice. You can see that we also have the audio, which, I had my Sennheiser high-end audio headset ready to go with my 3.5 millimeter jack, and I was really surprised. The audio on this is not bad. It certainly has enough volume, and it doesn't sound half bad, especially considering you're dealing with these small speakers here. So I actually was quite fine just using the stock audio on this. And again, because it's off-ear, I love the off-ear feeling. I don't really like having the headphones on because it makes you feel more enclosed. When you're in a virtual reality environment, it's kind of nice not to have them on your ear because it makes it feel just a little bit more immersive. And so the audio solution on this, I was really surprised and really enjoyed. Let's talk about the thing that surprised me the most about using this. I think it was the hand tracking. I've never used hand tracking before. And those of you that have watched my other videos, and when the Vario Aero came out, it had the ability, it had some buttons on the side that you were able to basically get into your menu system without having to use a controller. You could use the buttons. Well, with hand tracking, it's that on steroids. You basically kind of take your hand, and if you don't have a controller, you can hold it this way, and it'll give you a menu option. You can squeeze it, and it'll pop the menu. You can touch the menu with your fingers. I didn't realize how much I was going to really enjoy the hand tracking aspects of this headset, but that was a pleasant surprise for me, and I commend Meta on that. And so again, I know this headset costs a lot more than the Quest 2 did, but man, you are getting a lot of features. Obviously, as we talked about, you've got the lenses and all that stuff. But you've got the depth sensor, which gives you the hand tracking and the easy room setup. You've got the pass-through cameras. We'll talk about that in a second. But there's so much technology in this that at $499, I'm actually impressed that they could get all those features in here and get the price that low. So let's talk a little bit about what they're really touting on this. It's mixed reality. Again, just as a recap for any of you that are new, I personally don't think mixed reality for gaming is going to be that much more than a fad. I just think I'd rather be immersed in a virtual reality world than have some things popping into my room. It's really a cool experience, and we have been playing with that experience in this, and it was neat. And what I like the most about it is I can see that as almost a gateway drug for people that might not be sure about virtual reality. But if they can get in there and actually kind of be in their normal environment, and then you can bring in elements of virtual reality slowly, I can see where that could open this market up and expand it just by people that weren't sure about it, but then they want to try that. So the mixed reality there, I'm impressed, and I can see that being good for our industry as a whole. The funny thing is the camera's on here, so when you put it on, it's neat because all of a sudden you have a view of your room. In fact, it was funny as we were trying experiences, out of habit, I was trying to walk people to the center of the room, and I realized I didn't have to do that because with this on, you can see the room. You can walk around just fine. Now, the quality of it is not great. It's the quality of, kind of almost like watching a YouTube video, like almost like a 360 video or something. It's not that great. It's pretty grainy. If your hand moves in front, it distorts and warps. But it's cool enough because of the fact you see your environment and everything is in three-dimensional. So when I was sitting at my desk, I could see that my computer monitor was here, and I could see that I had a speaker back behind it. So that side of it works. And it's definitely good enough. I can read my cell phone. I could almost read my computer screen. So the pass-through is definitely the best Meta's ever had. And I think the only pass-through or the only mixed reality experience that I'm aware of that you could probably top this would be the Vario XR3, which is a ridiculously expensive headset. But as far as getting to where mixed reality is every day and it truly is mixing reality and augmented reality, bringing that in, we're a long ways away still from making that affordable. But it gives you an idea. And being able to pop up a menu right in front of you, like it's like as if I was sitting here now and then I just boink, pop up a menu and it's sitting here in my room. It's a unique experience for sure. So, we'll see how that works out in the long run, but I definitely appreciate what they've done there. So I went ahead and I did some room scale stuff, and I've tried to get as many experiences. Again, this is just a real preliminary use of this headset, so I'm going to do a lot more A/B testing and a lot more in-depth review later, but I wanted to get you guys my first impressions. I figured a lot of you guys would be asking me about flight sims and all that stuff, so let's talk about this headset in general and the specifics of using it. So the very first thing I've got to tell you visuals-wise, the Pancake lenses do give you edge-to-edge clarity, but there is screen door effect. I was kind of surprised by that. I haven't seen screen door effect in a while. And so this thing does have screen door effect. And the other odd thing about the visuals, I noticed when I was in a menu, the lines around the menu, like anytime I saw like a vertical or horizontal line, it looked kind of weird. It didn't look like a crisp line. And so I actually went out and had to figure out what was going on. And what I found out is Meta actually has taken the screens in here and they've tilted them. And they've done that in order to get a little bit wider field of view. But what that does now is whenever you're looking at a horizontal line, well, on the panel itself, it's actually drawing a diagonal line because it's tilted. And that gives you kind of that effect that we used to have with the old graphics, the old 3D graphics, where whenever you had a diagonal, you had the stair-steppy thing, and you had to have anti-aliasing to clean it up. You get a little of that in this when you're looking at any kind of vertical or horizontal line. So that was a little distracting. It wasn't a deal breaker, but it was there and it was noticeable. In addition to that, I think part of that also causes an enhancement to the screen door effect. So it's in no way the screen door effect of old. But if you guys remember in the old days with our OLED screens, they had a pentile pixel arrangement. And and it gave you kind of this, it was just a different pattern. You almost saw like a specky pattern around it. Well, I think with them tilting these lenses a little bit and having the little bit of screen door effect, it's a little of that same experience, although nowhere near that level. You're talking, minuscule. Picture that pattern of that effect of our old OLED pentile displays and shrink it down really, really small to where you can just barely see it. And that's kind of the experience, or that's what it reminded me of in here, is that you're getting this like little screen door effect, and it's just the pixels look a little out of place. So it is noticeable. So that's something to be aware of. Now, the field of view in this thing, it's on par with the Pimax Crystal. It's on par with the Vario Aero. It's bigger vertically than the Vario Aero, but it's a little different as well. So the aspect ratio, and I think because of that way they tilted those screens, I think what that has caused is now when you kind of look, the old HPG2 had like a tunnel look. It's like you're looking down a tunnel. And then I talked about how the Vario Aero is more of a rectangular widescreen view almost. So it's got a definitive top edge and it's more of a rectangle. And then the Pimax Crystal is more of a 4x3 square. So those are kind of aspect ratios. With this, it's weird because it's almost a gumdrop where it's got this kind of a tunnel look, but then it comes down and gets fat, and it's got a really fat lower part. So it's this weird gumdroppy kind of a look that you're looking through. It's fine. It doesn't ruin, the VR experience or anything, but it's just different. I've never seen a kind of a field of view or a cutoff look like that before. So that's something that you'll notice. So let me talk about those of you that are new. There is one glaring huge difference between the Quest 3 and, say, the Vario Aero or the Pimax Crystal. And that's the way that it sends the video signal to the headset. So this thing has a Snapdragon, Generation 2 processor in it. So it can run experiences by themselves in the headset without any other outside influence. But if you want to do PC VR, the way typically a headset works with PC VR is you have a DisplayPort input and you plug it in. And what that's basically doing is it's sending the video signal itself straight to the headset so it can display that on the screens. So this headset, and any headset that doesn't have a DisplayPort in it, does it a little differently to send the information from the computer to the headset. And it does it whether you're doing it over wireless, over the network, or even if you're plugging it in. The process is still the same. And what it does, instead of sending the video signal to the headset, it actually takes that video signal and it compresses it and encodes it and turns it into a data stream. And then it ships it to the headset, where the headset then decodes that image and brings it up on the displays. So it's a fundamentally different way that these types of headsets process an image versus, you know, the high-end headsets that are dedicated to PCVR. Now, what that does traditionally means a couple things. Number one, you're going to get artifacting. You're going to get some noise in your screen depending on how fast that connection is. So what I did was I went ahead and tried this. and I would recommend for anyone that's going to be doing any kind of PCVR, look at getting an application called Virtual Desktop. Those of you that are veterans to this probably are laughing at me right now because you're like, yeah, we've known about Virtual Desktop forever. But Virtual Desktop is a standalone application that is far more powerful for the Quest than the Quest's native, you know, PC hookup, you know, whatever, PC Link and AirLink and all that stuff. Virtual Desktop has so much more that you can do with it. And I've got a link in the description below if you're interested. I have a 25% discount if you're interested in Virtual Desktop. But I think anybody that's serious about using this for PCVR, you're going to want Virtual Desktop. I know it was, once I used it, I'm like, okay, this is a no-brainer. This is a have-to-have. So, so through Virtual Desktop, I was able to hook this up through the I have two networks, and I don't even have the new 6E. So this is capable of the latest network standard, which is 6E, Wi-Fi 6E. I'm still like back a generation. I think it's Wi-Fi 5 or something like that, or AX or whatever it is. So I was able to hook up onto that. And just out of curiosity, I tested it on the 2.4 gigahertz network, and it was terrible. I mean, there was so much noise, there was so much artifacting, it was really not usable. But I wanted to see what it would do. Now, I switched over then to my 5G network on this older router, and I was really impressed. I was surprised at how good the clarity of this was wireless. Hardly any artifacting, and I did this in DCS, which is something I'm familiar with. I could read all my gauges quite well. Again, keep in mind, aside from the screen door effect. But the gauges were clear. Everything was clear. I think the only time I got into some noise or artifacting was when I came in on the carrier and landed. With all the carrier and the other planes and stuff, it got a little busy, and I noticed a little distortion there. But I was shocked at how well this thing provided an image through the network. And I would even tell you that because it can do the 6E, I think if you get on a 6E network and you're non-congested, I don't know that you're going to really have to have any kind of link cable or anything. I think this thing's going to be quite capable of handling PCVR titles wirelessly through, you know, having a good network and having a non-congested network. Those are the keys. The tracking on it was amazing. The tracking for this, for inside out, to me was better than the Crystal. I had a few little issues with the Crystal when I was flying, and for this one, I never lost tracking at all. The tracking was fantastic. Now, if you get in a low light situation, you will lose the hand tracking fairly quickly. But as far as the headset tracking, it really was solid. The controllers, you know, they feel really good. The controllers tracked really well. I was worried about not having rings on them. But however they have these designed, and I think they're integrating also hand tracking with following the controllers, these things tracked fine, and they felt great. I mean, they feel like a premium controller, you know, compared to the old Crystals. It's a good feeling controller. So no problems with that. You know, the battery life, from what I understand, is good. It uses one AA. You know, it's got a button now to release the battery door because they used to come off on the Quest 2. So they've addressed a lot of the issues, but it's a good feeling controller, tracked fine. So no issues with any of that stuff. So again, I'm going to do a lot more with this. And I think for simulators, I don't know that it's quite there yet. I'm on the verge. I'm really struggling right now because I think this headset could potentially become my new recommendation for the best value headset out there. It's close. The biggest thing that's keeping me back, obviously the screen door effect is an issue, but the biggest thing that's holding me back and the Achilles heel of this, and I think what's really going to be the downside of this headset, is the battery life. Because certainly if you're doing that mixed reality stuff, this thing eats about a percentage of battery a minute. So we burned through 30% of the battery in, you know, definitely it was less than 30 minutes. So this thing eats batteries if you're doing mixed reality. And then, but even when I was doing the flight sim, I plugged it in just to have some potential charging going on while I was using it. And it was plugged into a C port on the computer, which gives you your best option for charging versus, you know, USB-A. It still burned through about 20% of the battery being plugged in less than an hour of flight. I think I was flying about 45 minutes or so, but less than an hour of flight, and it burned through 20% of the battery while it was plugged in. So I think that's going to be the big issue, and the fact that it, you know, negatively charges. So even when it's plugged in, it's going to drain if you're using it. I think that's going to be the big limiting factor, and what might keep this from being my top recommendation for the best value in VR headsets. But again, I need to do some more time, some more testing, and we'll see what those results bring. I would also recommend to you, and I had people comment about this on my last video. They're telling me how, you know, you don't need the 512. There's two models of this headset. This is the 512. There's also a 128. They're basically telling me that, you know, games are only 10 gigabytes and they can put 20 games on their 128. And that might be true, but I still think for $150 extra, you're getting 4 times the memory. Because let me put it to you this way. How many times have you ever purchased a hard drive or bought computer memory and you thought, this is more memory than I'll ever need. I'll never use all this stuff up. And then a year later or 2 years later, you're going, I'm out of memory. Well, if you've ever done that, there's probably a pretty good chance that the 128, you're going to run into that in a year. And the big problem is, and the reason I recommend, if you can do it, getting the more expensive headset, is because that's one thing you can't change in this headset once you've purchased it. There's no way to upgrade that later. It's locked in. So you can always change out the head strap later for comfort. You can do all that. You can change out the facial gasket, all that. But you're not going to ever be able to change that internal memory and that internal storage. So again, I highly recommend anybody, if you're going to, you know, plan on using this for any kind of standalone at all, get that 512 for that extra $150. I think it's going to save you grief down the road. Now, if you can't swing it, the experience of the 128 is still going to be amazing with the visuals. Just know you are going to be limited for sure, and you're probably going to run into that. So the last thing I did, just because I was curious last night and I had been flying DCS and had a great flight, I'm like, let me try Elite Dangerous. And so I popped Elite Dangerous up. And those of you that have watched the channel know I'm an OLED snob. I love my blacks. But, you know, obviously this isn't local dimming or anything. But I was able to get the experience very close to what I got in the Vario Aero, because this has a brightness controller. And again, because it's got hand tracking, you can adjust the brightness pretty easily on the fly without having to have a controller or anything. I was able to get the experience pretty close to the Aero, and it wasn't bad. I knocked the brightness down to about 40%. And with that extra vertical field of view, dogfighting, it actually worked out okay. Now, that was one place where I did find one of the big flaws of the Pancake lenses. And just to share this with you is something else I noticed. So Pancake lenses, there's two problems with using Pancake lenses. Pancake lenses uses two basic lenses stacked. And that allows you to get them really thin, so you can see that's a much thinner headset. But two problems are they generally absorb a lot more light because they're bouncing the light between the two lenses a lot more. That is not a problem in this. The panels they're using, brightness is a non-issue. This thing is plenty bright, and you can adjust the brightness. So that's not an issue with Pancake lenses. But the other issue you run into is you get some potential glare because you get reflections between the two lenses. And I did encounter that when I was in Elite Dangerous with a really high contrast scene. And I'll put some through the lens stuff. Now on this through the lens, ignore the chattering lines. That's just not synced. The screens aren't synced with the phone recording it. But you can see there's a little glare that comes through, and you see that in the headset. It's only in really high contrast scenes, so it only happens once in a while. You don't notice it on a regular basis, but it is there, and it will catch your attention from time to time. So definitely still worth the Pancake lenses, though. Spherical lenses are better because they don't have that issue and they don't have the problem eating the light, but you also would never get that kind of skinny form factor without using Pancake lenses. So, again, I'm very excited about this headset. I think it's going to usher in a new era for people that have maybe been curious about VR but just haven't wanted to try it yet. I think this headset's going to get a lot more people interested in VR. If you've ever been curious about VR, this is probably the headset. It's finally time that you can actually get in there, and it will give you a legitimate feel for whether this is something you'll enjoy or not. So that's kind of it. Plan on a more in-depth review down the road. But for now, I want to just share with you my thoughts and my feelings. And that's kind of where we stand with the new Meta Quest 3. And I've got to say, good job, Meta. I am impressed. So thank you so much, Meta, for bringing this to the marketplace. And we'll run it through its paces, and we'll let you know what I think. So until then, make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss out. And remember to get your game on.